So, how does distance impact education and what can we do about that? Based on research we have been doing on new theses on human cognition, we brought here some discussions connected to online presence versus in-class presence, how cognition can be shared, and some of our potentialities to face the challenges that have been posed to us, especially in the eye of the coronavirus storm. So why is it so challenging to teach and learn online? What are the possible elements responsible for turning distance experiences so distinctive from in-class experiences? We're going to discuss a few concepts from the phenomenological tradition, a few concepts from American pragmatism, cognition beyond the brain, and the internet and its sense of community based on the web extended mind. Sean Gallagher from the University of Memphis, which is one of the philosophers that have been connecting cognition to phenomenology while building an approach to cognition known as the embodied cognition, once asked Dalai Lama if there would be any difference between meditating in group or alone. With his question, he wanted to find out more about doing it yourself or sharing the practice with others. He wanted to explore another form of intersubjectivity, which is beyond the dominant cognitivist model based on brain and mirror neurons or the theory of mind. He believes there is more to see besides synapses in the brain if we want to achieve a wider understanding of what happens when we are in the presence of other people, interacting with them, seeing them face to face. Maybe what he was trying to find out was quite close to what we all have been talking about regarding learning and teaching online. Phenomenology is full of concepts and thoughts regarding presence, intersubjectivity, connections, how we relate to others, and even to ourselves. It is a branch of philosophy dedicated to the study of the mind-world dyad, or the self-other-world triad. Hubert Dreyfus and Alva Noe are two other authors whose philosophy is inspired by the phenomenological tradition. They lead us to think through online presence versus in-person presence. What is it that makes one so different from the other? When a teacher arrives and looks at his class of students, he can feel them. The face-to-face encounter makes it possible to hear their tone of voice or to see their faces, for example. When we as instructors can't see our class as a whole, we lack a sense of the class, according to Dreyfus. We could say that we lack the presence of our students as a dynamic system. That is what a class is, a system in which each part interferes in the other and may provoke changes in the system's unicity. This system includes the tutor, who can learn much more while sharing the same learning environment with his students. And Dreyfus would also say that surprise and risk are two of the main elements that are present on face-to-face learning environments. These elements may not be present in an online situation, as Dreyfus demonstrates in his six-stage learning theory, which he develops in order to comprehend the stages a student needs to follow if he or she desires to learn something effectively, leaving the novice state to become a master. I won't have time here to go through all of the 6 learning stages drawn by Dreyfus, but an important feature of it would be that it is unlikely that we go beyond the 3rd stage of his theory if we are learning only online, with the tutor physically distant from his pupil. And that would be because of the absence of feeling, emotions, and the whole body. That would prevent the student from experiencing whatever he or she needs to experience when progressing in any matter, be it learning to drive or to philosophize. Alva Noe wrote a number of essays in which he discusses the different kinds of presence. The world is present to us when we engage in our activities. When we act, we perceive. When we are in the same physical environment as other people, we relate to each other, even if this group is divided in two, for example, teachers and students or actors and audience, to recall an example from him. We act as a system. A student may interrupt the teacher, an actor may forget his lines, leading the audience to a collective embarrassment, and so on. It is different when we record a video for our students, when we watch a movie instead of a play, or even when we have classes using online platforms. Because when we are online, all we can see is a series of atomized faces in small boxes on a Zoom or Hangout screen. I'm sure everyone here would agree with that each of them is in a particular environment. We don't have a common collective sense. We don't share the environment and its felt qualities, to use John Dewey's words. We're going to come back to them later. We can't infer if our students seem focused or sparse. We can't see their legs if they are shaking in anxiety. There is no whispering and no noises, and everybody must wait before turning their microphones on, which may result in less spontaneity. That's what we've been experiencing in these pandemic days, isn't it? And even if we had the most advanced sound and image technologies, what would we lack? Would our issues be solved? Probably not. We would still lack eye movements, head motion, gesture, posture, intercorporeality. So coming back to Dewey, the American pragmatist John Dewey is another great researcher to offer a few interesting ideas regarding different dimensions of experience and aesthetics. Dewey postulates that each experience has its felt qualities. What does it mean? According to Mark Johnson, a philosopher who is one of the proponents of the embodied cognition thesis and a researcher of Dewey's ideas, we tend to downplay the importance of qualities as part of meaning. And we shouldn't do that, as meaning, Johnson argues, is grounded in bodily experience. It arises from our feeling of qualities, sensory patterns, movements, changes, and emotional contours. Meaning depends on our experiencing and assessing the qualities of situations. Here we can see a quote from Johnson's book, The Meaning of the Body. Dewey takes great pains to remind us that the primary locus of human experience is not atomistic sense impressions, but rather what he called a situation. By this he meant not just our physical setting, but the whole complex of physical, biological, social, and cultural conditions that constitute any given experience taken in its fullest, deepest, richest, broadest sense. So when the class is online, we lack the sense of the situation. It is hard to grasp the felt qualities, the sense of the class to merge Johnson's ideas with some of Dreyfus and Noah's ideas, and also Gallagher's, that I've mentioned before. This is the bad news, maybe. But what good news is there? We owe our capacity of shared cognition, our skilled capacity to share our minds. Not everything regarding cognition is in the head. As we've seen, our experiences result from a mix between the agent, the cognizer, and its environment. It includes culture, people, arts, education, institutions, technologies. This is an idea shared by most of the thinkers associated to the framework known as 4E cognition. So as we've seen, cognition is embodied because we feel the qualities of our experiences in our body. We need to have the experience of the bodies of other people to interact with them. Cognition is enactive in the sense that we should act if we want to perceive the world and make sense of it. Cognition is embedded in the social, cultural, and to include the internet, virtual environment. And cognition is extended. We are cyborgs, not necessarily in the science fiction sense, but natural-born cyborgs. Human beings able to merge with technologies that extend our minds out of our bodies and brains. This is an idea from Andy Clark. And it includes other people's minds in the sense that we may share the same difficulties, for example, or may live the same situation, and even though we perceive these moments in different ways, depending on our perspectives and interests, there is a sense of shared cognition. What we have been thinking about is how the internet may help us create and sustain these connections, especially if we are able to talk in an open, honest way. In this sense of community, it is in this sense of community that we believe we must focus. Maybe it is time for a distributed cognitive awareness, time for sharing at its best. What can we do when we connect to technologies? We can improve our cognitive capacities as long as these technologies in fact result in body and brain extensions that allow us to strengthen reasoning, improve creativity skills, expand our capacity to develop projects and ideas. In a similar way, we may improve our cognitive capacities by means of connecting with each other. We could really be each other's cognitive extensions. That's what we are trying to develop here. So, if the basic idea of the extended mind is that the mind extends beyond the biological brain and body through the world, including technologies, from the idea of the extended mind emerges another one, which would be the web extended mind. This concept was coined by Paul Smart, and it is the extended mind thesis applied to the specific social technical context of the web. Technological and informational elements of the web can, at least sometimes, serve as part of the mechanistic substrate that realizes human mental states and processes. So it is interesting to notice that when defining the fundamental elements for a technology to be considered an extension of someone's mind, Clark highlights the need for this technology to be reliable. How can the internet be a reliable environment? The web becomes a trustworthy environment as people responsible for its constitution work for it. And we need to feel comfortable while using the internet, especially when it comes to education. Evoking psychologist James Gibson, we should be aware then of the affordances that emerge from the relationship between teachers and students in these environments when we are discussing e-learning, of course. The novel character of this relationship emerges not only due to its online features, but because it results from the urgency of the pandemic crisis that has also been contributing to raise anxiety and uncertainty levels among the whole scholarly community. So we should be aware of social affordances, emotional, affective affordances, to say. Why is it so significant in these days? We have been told to live in isolation. However, it doesn't mean we need to think in isolation and avoid exchanging ideas, comments, and experiences. In fact, we believe this is precisely what we should do even more right now to share and think together. It is not easy to articulate content for students online, especially if you have not prepared it in advance, something that is usual regarding online courses, but only in regular conditions. It may become easier if we share our practices, worries, and concerns, and somehow transcend social isolation, preventing it from becoming a situation of total isolation. We are facing a common problem everywhere and its consequences in so many countries, and we have probably been facing similar issues then, regarding our daily classes, students, learning contents, and contexts. So why not communicate about it and commit with each other in a healthy, extended way? For example, it may be hard to record and edit the content for an online class, but it may become easier if teachers share their doubts concerning software and apps. It may also be a good idea to share your concerns with your students and to listen to their concerns as well. Yes, tell them about how your routine as an educator, as a person, with your family, kids, has changed, and encourage them to share their own thoughts on the changes they have been facing daily. Can be a good idea. And why do teachers have to be sudden heroes of the online education after all? Why have teachers been feeling the pressure to become a YouTuber suddenly? It makes no sense at all. It is also imperative to acknowledge that what these changes mean for the students' routines. One may believe their bedrooms are like the ones on the left when they are actually like the one on the right, which is very common here in Brazil. So why not acting in a more flexible, horizontal way, instead of working hard to transpose to online environments the same old problems that were born and persist in the traditional in-class education? We're talking here about the one-to-many approach. It may not be the best one when we use the internet to interact. The internet has made the interactions flexible, creating a network of parallel distributed conversations, transactions, relationships. Where is the center of it? It is decentralized, in fact. That's an underlying feature of it. Even when the pandemic crisis comes to an end and we possibly return to our traditional face-to-face learning environments, we should remember our capacity of sharing practices, acting as each other's cognitive extensions, being empathetic, being more open and caring, nurturing each other's development. After all, this is about education, be it online or in class. Thank you.